The stench of burned metal and ozone filled the air. Captain Xenthari's antennae twitched as he watched the humans prepare their weapons. His fleet, the best the Xenthari had to offer, hovered over the barren world, confident that victory was at hand. The Xenthari were a warlike species, their ship hulls adorned with trophies from countless battles across the galaxy. This should have been a routine operation. Subdue the humans, force them to surrender, take what was needed, and leave. Yet, as the humans readied themselves on the surface, Xenthari felt a twinge of unease. Their reputation for irrational behavior and excessive force preceded them. Stories about humanity's unpredictable nature had spread across the stars, whispered in the shadows of galactic council halls. Most species dismissed them as exaggerated tales, but Xenthari wasn't so sure. They're just outnumbered. It'll be over in minutes, Xenthari reassured himself. His officers around him clicked in agreement. On the planet's surface, Colonel Maria Davis barked orders at her troops, their exocets gleaming under the dim red sun. She knew they were outmatched by the Xenthari, technologically and numerically, but she also knew one thing that the Xenthari hadn't accounted for: humanity's knack for what they called overkill. Humanity had never been about proportionality. Where other species measured their responses, humans simply ensured that if they had to hit, they hit harder than anyone expected. Their motto wasn't fight to win. It was fight, so there's nothing left standing. A shrill alarm echoed through the human base as Xenthari ships began to descend. "Launch the drones," Davis ordered. A swarm of drones shot into the sky, their tiny engines buzzing like angry hornets. In most cases, drones were meant for scouting, minor disruptions, but these were different. Packed with enough firepower to level cities, the drones aimed at weak points in the Xenthari fleet. The first explosion rippled through the Xenthari ranks. Xenthari's eyes widened as one of his battleships split in two, an inferno of fire and shrapnel. "What? They shouldn't have anything that powerful," he shouted. "Sir, we're picking up energy surges on the surface. They're powering something big," one of his officers reported. "Send the ground troops," Xenthari commanded. "Take them out before they launch whatever that is." On the surface, Colonel Davis smirked. The Xenthari didn't realize they'd already lost. It wasn't the drones they needed to worry about. Behind her, a massive cannon was powering up, glowing with an ominous blue light. This was what humanity called Overkill, a weapon designed not just to defend, but to utterly annihilate. As the Xenthari ground troops landed, they were met with an unrelenting barrage of human firepower. Tanks roared to life. Artillery shells pounded the ground, and soldiers in mechanized suits cut through the invaders like paper. Every shot fired by the humans was aimed to eliminate, not wound. There would be no retreat for the Xenthari. Xenthari watched in horror as the humans continued to escalate. Why are they going this far? "They've already crippled us," he muttered. "Humans don't do proportional responses," one of his officers whispered, the fear in his voice unmistakable. Before Xenthari could respond, the massive cannon on the surface fired. A beam of energy, bright as a newborn star, shot through space and cut to the heart of the Xenthari flagship. In seconds, what had once been the pride of the Xenthari fleet was reduced to glowing debris. Back on the ground, Davis stood, arms crossed, as she watched the chaos unfold above. "Let this be a lesson," she muttered. "If you come for us, we'll come for you harder." In the distance, the remaining Xenthari ships began to retreat. Xenthari, his pride shattered, ordered a full withdrawal. They had underestimated the humans. No, more than that, they had underestimated their capacity for destruction. As the Xenthari fled, licking their wounds, the galaxy watched with a mixture of awe and terror. Humanity had once again proven its point. What others called overkill, humans called survival. The Xenthari ships limped away, their once formidable fleet now reduced to a handful of damaged vessels. Captain Xenthari stared blankly at the flickering monitors on his command deck. His mind raced, struggling to comprehend the sheer devastation that had unfolded. The humans had not only won, they had obliterated everything in their path. "We underestimated them," Xether muttered, his voice barely audible over the alarms blaring throughout the ship. The few remaining officers around him were silent, knowing there was nothing more to say. This wasn't just a defeat. This was an annihilation. Far below, on the surface of the barren planet, Colonel Davis watched the retreating ships with satisfaction. The cannon, now cooling from its massive discharge, stood like a monument to humanity's determination. Around her, the soldiers cheered, but Davis remained stone-faced. Victory was one thing, but the war wasn't over. "Send word to command," she said, turning to her communications officer. "Tell them the Xenthari have been repelled, but we need reinforcements. They'll come back." The officer nodded, tapping on the console. "Message sent, Colonel." Davis knew this wasn't the last time they'd see the Xenthari. She could feel it in her bones. Once a species like the Xenthari tasted defeat at human hands, they would either withdraw and never return or escalate to an all-out war of extinction. Judging by the Xenthari's reputation, she suspected the latter. Back on the Xenthari homeworld, the news of the fleet's destruction spread like wildfire. The High Council convened an emergency session, their bioluminescent forms flickering with agitation. "We lost the entire fleet?" one counselor hissed, his voice sharp with disbelief. "How is that possible? We had superior numbers, superior technology." "It's the humans," Xether said, standing before the council, battered but alive. "They don't fight like other species. They don't just defend, they obliterate. It's not about tactics for them. It's about overwhelming force." The counselors clicked nervously, their many eyes shifting between each other. The humans were a relatively new species on the galactic stage, but they had already gained a reputation for their bizarre strategies and disproportionate responses to threats. What the Xenthari had dismissed as exaggerated rumors now seemed all too real. "We cannot allow this to stand," another counselor growled. "If word spreads that the Xenthari were defeated by a primitive species, it will embolden our enemies. We must strike back, harder this time. Total war." Xether hesitated. I don't think that's wise. The humans." "You don't think," the counselor interrupted, his eyes narrowing. "Captain, you have failed us once. We will not allow fear of an inferior species to dictate our strategy. We will crush them with the full might of the Xenthari Armada." Xether clenched his jaw. He had seen the human capacity for destruction up close, and something deep inside him told him that the Xenthari were making a grave mistake. But his protest would fall on deaf ears. The council had already made up their minds. Weeks later, Davis stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, a human battleship stationed at the edge of the Sol system. Reinforcements had arrived, and Earth's defenses were being fortified in preparation for the inevitable counterattack. The humans knew the Xenthari wouldn't accept defeat. They never did. "Colonel, we received intel," one of her officers said, approaching her. "Xenthari forces are massing at the edge of their territory. Looks like they're preparing for a full-scale assault." Davis nodded. It was only a matter of time. She turned to face the vastness of space, her mind already working through the next steps. Humanity's forces were ready, but they couldn't afford complacency. The Xenthari were a relentless species, and their pride wouldn't allow them to walk away from a fight, no matter the cost. "What do you think their next move will be?" the officer asked. "They'll come with everything they have," Davis replied. "It won't be a skirmish this time. They're coming for total war. And when they do—" She paused, her eyes narrowing. "We'll show them what overkill really looks like." The Xenthari Armada arrived in human space with all the fury their species could muster. Thousands of ships, bristling with weapons and shields, surged forward, ready to crush humanity beneath their might. Their strategy was simple: overwhelm the humans before they had a chance to respond. But humanity was ready. From the moment the Xenthari crossed into human space, they were met with a barrage of firepower that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Massive cannons mounted on orbital platforms fired beams of energy that sliced through Xenthari ships like paper. Swarms of drones, each loaded with enough explosives to decimate entire cities, darted through the Xenthari ranks, detonating with surgical precision. On the surface of human colonies, entire continents had been turned into fortresses, bristling with defensive emplacements and anti-aircraft guns. The Xenthari ground troops never even made it to the surface. From her command post aboard the Resolute, Davis watched as the Xenthari fleet was systematically torn apart. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The humans didn't just want to repel the invasion. They wanted to send a message to the galaxy. If you come for us, you won't survive. By the end of the day, the Xenthari fleet was nothing but debris, scattered across the stars. Xether, watching from a remote command vessel, could only stare in disbelief. The Xenthari, once the terror of the galaxy, had been utterly defeated again. "This is what humans call overkill," Xether muttered, his voice hollow. "And we never stood a chance." As the last of the Xenthari forces fled into the void, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had proven, once and for all, that when pushed to the brink, they wouldn't just fight back. They would unleash a storm so devastating, so relentless, that no one could stand against them. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to wonder, what happens when the humans decide to push back?